Before we leave for the evening, I wanted to spend a little time just talking about something which has been really important to the Ontario Guild of English Handbell Ringers over the last year and a half. Many of you know about this, but some might not. As I said at the beginning of the festival when I got up here, it's so good to see everybody in person again and to be here ringing together. It has been a long road. 4 years ago was the last time we were able to get together. We went through a pandemic. At the height of the pandemic, none of us were playing. All of our groups were shut down. We were working on ways to connect together online, and then eventually we were looking for ways to come out of the pandemic and rebuild. At the height of the pandemic, our active membership had gone from the mid-300s down to just about 100 people. And we needed to put the organization back together again. One of the things that we did is we looked for grant possibilities. And we found one, the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and they had a grant called the Resilient Communities Fund. And it was specifically directed towards nonprofit organizations to rebuild. We applied, and we received a grant of over $43,000. With that grant, we were able to try and attract new members to OGEHR. That's what we put together. We were able to purchase 6 sets of hand chimes from 3 to 5 octaves, and we offered them to new groups to join OGEHR and be part of a project to learn some music, play together on a concert, and then present it eventually to the rest of you. We did that. On March 4th, we had all of those groups together, and they presented virtually to each other. And the really nice part of this is the majority of those groups were youth groups and school groups, people that we have not had in the organization before, people who are the future of OGEHR. They're not here with us because they're not yet playing at your level, but they will be at some point. And we will see those people come and join us. In September, we're going to be releasing the video of their performance. And we would like for our active membership to see it, for the general public to see it, and it's all been made possible by the Ontario Trillium Foundation. So I think it's time that we as an organization say a big thank you for them, or to them, for allowing us to do this and allowing us to rebuild as an organization. There have been a lot of people who have worked behind the scenes to make that happen, and I know that a lot of you know about this already because of the emails that we sent out and the information on the website. But I think it's also important that since we are together, we have this opportunity to hear about that project, and I hope you'll be excited at seeing their video when we release it in September. Thank you.
Welcome to everybody. On behalf of the Ontario Guild of English Handbell Ringers, I'd like to welcome you all to our OGEHR/Trillium mini festival recording session. Today, we'll be seeing performances from various groups from across the province who are all involved in this project. I'm speaking to you from London, Ontario, but we have groups and individuals joining us from Niagara-on-the-Lake, Mississauga, Whitby, and all the way out to Ottawa. Welcome to everybody. This project was put together to help recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. It would not have been possible without the support of the Ontario Trillium Foundation, who provided a grant that allowed us to purchase a number of hand chime sets and distribute them across the province. All of our groups you will see are new groups to OGEHR, and most are also new to ringing. The grant also allowed us to engage an experienced conductor to listen to today's performances and give encouragement for future growth as an ensemble. And finally, we will have the opportunity to participate in a massed ringing video. We will be able to record our groups, and the individual recordings will be put together into one mass video. Now it's time to get things going. So I'm going to turn things over to Lisa to introduce our guest clinician for today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Kyriakides. I'm the Vice President of OGEHR, and I have been involved in this Trillium project from the start. Does somebody have, everybody make sure you're muting so we don't get an echo sound. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our guest clinician today, and I have had the pleasure of working with Stuart, so I can guarantee you're going to enjoy working with him today. So a little bit about Stuart. Dr. Stuart Sladden was born and raised in the Greater Toronto Area. He holds a Bachelor of Music degree from the University of Toronto in 2002 in vocal jazz performance. He has a Master of Music degree from the University of Manitoba in 2012 and a Doctorate of Music degree from the University of Alberta, which he got very recently in 2020, all of them in choral conducting. Stuart began playing and conducting handbells in 2008 at Eden United Church, which is located in Mississauga. And since then, he's been involved with a number of handbell ensembles as both a ringer and a conductor. Some of these ensembles include the Eden Bells, Bells Appeal, and the Bronze Foundation in Toronto, Westworth Chapel Bells, and Rochester Ringers in Winnipeg, and Jubiloso Bells of Concordia, and the Robertson Wesley Ringers in Edmonton. Stuart has been the guest conductor at provincial handbell festivals across Canada, has presented at and been a guest conductor for Canada's National Symposium, the Ringing Link, in Winnipeg in 2014. He was the Canadian representative conductor at the 17th International Handbell Symposium held in Vancouver during the summer of 2016, and was the guest conductor at OGEHR's Piece by Piece Festival held in London in 2019. So welcome, Stuart. Thank you so much for being in this project with us and for all that you're going to do to share your knowledge and expertise with us and the ringers today.
Thank you, Lisa. I just wanted to say thank you to OGEHR for inviting me to do this. As Lisa mentioned, I started my handbell journey in Ontario, and it's always a distinct honor and pleasure to be able to come and work with OGEHR in various projects that I get invited to come back to. So it feels like coming home a little bit. So thank you very much for having me back to do this.
Thank you both, Stuart and Lisa, for getting things started. So Sona, if you could introduce our first group. We're going to watch YouTube videos of the first groups to present, and Sona is going to let us know who the first up is.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. So first group is the Durham Kids Choir. The Durham Children's Bell Choir is made up of Korean children in the Durham area. It's run by Durham Korean Church, and all the children are born and live in Canada, but with a background with Korean parents. It's a pity that many children couldn't get together due to COVID. Jeannie, who teaches, has been working as a handbell choir teacher in Korea for about 2 years, and she is a music teacher registered in Ontario. And in the following video, you will see a number of pieces presented as we follow the progress of the students. Please enjoy the Durham Children's Bell Choir. Thank you.
Now, if you can all make sure you're muted and then go to the chat and have a look. And the first link is now in the chat. Please watch the video and then click back into our Zoom.
One, two, three, ready, set, play. Two, three. Second ending, Durham.
I think that most videos should probably be done by now. Thank you for that performance and actually that view of the progress along the way. Let's turn things over to Stuart now to get some comments.
Sure thing. I wanted to start by saying that it was really neat, as just sort of Rob was mentioning, to watch the progression of the ensemble from your first kind of weeks with the solo melody line moving through becoming an ensemble. And the one sort of note that I did make here was it was neat to watch you become an ensemble. So in the first sort of the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star that you played was almost individual ringers, but by the time we got to the very last piece, the Yes, Jesus Loves Me, I could definitely see the growth from you as an ensemble. And one of the things that really struck me right from the very beginning, even though you're brand new to the instrument and all of that, was how clean the damping was in the melody that you played. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was really, really neat to see. And I think what a wonderful teaching technique to have the opportunity to just play a melody line as an ensemble, because as we know, this instrument is unique from any other instrument in that it takes 5, 6, 7 people to play a melody. And one of the challenges of this instrument is to be able to connect that melody across those 5 or 6 people. And so it was really, really neat to see that happen in that first part, and then see that progress into the ensemble that you became. It was also really neat to see the progression in your technique. It was sort of very angular and disjointed a little bit, very harsh at the beginning, but as we're moving through the video, I'm seeing a softening of that. And I do have a couple of comments that I'm going to make throughout the morning, I think, on technique, in that with the bells, or the chimes in this case, we want to be careful that we're not ringing the chime at the full extension of the arm all the time. And I must confess, I've watched a couple of the videos already, so I've seen a little bit of this, and we'll talk a little bit about this over the course of the morning. But really, it's in the wrist, that wrist motion. So, and that's where we can start to find some dynamic shading in the instrument. It's not as wide a dynamic palette as the handbells would have, but you can start to sort of think about smaller circles and engaging the clapper of the chime at the wrist rather than that full extension. Because when you're ringing full arm, and I did see that a little bit in that video, it gives that really sort of very crisp attack, whereas a slightly softer wrist motion will soften that attack a little bit as you're sort of moving through. And the sort of last thing that I'll say with respect to the piece itself, or as you're working through it, is that your time is very good as an ensemble. But one of the things that I really appreciated was hearing your conductor count at one point. She counted, I think it was the Silent Night, she counted you in. And what I would encourage you to do as an ensemble is to count together in your rehearsals, obviously not in performance. The idea being that you want to count as an ensemble so that you play as an ensemble. So there's a couple of places where, you know, what I'm assuming are chords that are supposed to be played together are not quite together. And once you start count and feel that the beat and internalize that beat, then those chords will line up a little bit better. And so I would encourage you to add one extra layer to that counting. So your conductor counted 1, 2, ready, go. And I would add maybe the inner pulse of that. We call that the heartbeat of the piece. So the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that inner pulse will help you not only settle into where the beat is, but also give you the opportunity to start to figure out where to prepare the note, because we know we have to prepare to play before we play. Otherwise, if we move right on the beat, that's also contributing to where the note's not quite lining up. But wow, what a great start that you have on this instrument. You're doing such good work already. And I'll just sort of close out, as Lisa alluded, my 2 graduate degrees are in choral performance. And so I love hearing people sing. And I approach handbells and hand chimes as choirs. And so quite often I'll have my ringers sing when they're rehearsing, because I find that helps to find the connection to the melody. So it was really nice to hear you singing that "Yes, Jesus Loved Me" on the second piece. So really, really well done. Keep up the really great work that you're already doing, and congratulations on a great performance.
Thanks so much for those comments. That is wonderful to hear. Let's turn things over to Lisa to introduce our second group.
So I have the pleasure of introducing the Robert Hopkins Public School Chime Choir. And they're called the R-Hop Ringers. So they are a brand new choir made up of grade 4 and grade 5 students from Robert Hopkins Public School in Ottawa. For many of the students, this was their first time reading music and playing an instrument. They are an enthusiastic and dedicated group of students who practice once a week during their recess. The group is directed by Heather Gordon, a teacher at the school and a handbell director at her church. She has been playing handbells herself for over 30 years. In the video, the Ringers are presenting a rehearsal of one of our massed pieces, the piece "Where Waters Flow." Please enjoy this video.
Again, a reminder, please make sure you are on mute. And then if you go to the chat now, I've just dropped in the second link.
Two,
And I think the videos should probably be done for most people now. Thank you to the R-Hop Ringers. And let's turn things over to Stuart.
I just want to say right off the bat that nice job on the piece. I understand that it's a rehearsal, but I think you're well on your way with this one. So really well done. And one of the things that I really appreciated, because it was neat to see the camera sort of go across and touch everybody's face. It was good to see the concentration as you're working through all of that. It's really easy when you have a piece of music and you play one beat in measure 3, and then you might not play another note until measure 15. It's really easy to get distracted and sort of move off to different things, but it was really nice to see you all really focused on what you were doing. So really well done with that. And just as a personal comment, I've been involved in handbells and hand chimes for a long time now, and it's an art form that when you try it, you get addicted to it. I don't think anybody that I know who's played handbell or chimes really doesn't sort of go all in. And it's really nice to see both in the first 2 groups, young people engaged in this art. And it warms my heart for the future of this art form, which is really quite special. A couple of little things that I just kind of want to encourage you to try to do over the next little while. And as I was watching sort of the you playing off the table, I noticed a number of you were kind of playing the chimes off the table. And when you do that, what happens is you add an extra layer to being prepared to play the note on time. So if it's down on the table, you'll have to lift the bell, the chime up, and then get it into ready position and ring. So what I'd like to maybe see a little bit more as you grow as an ensemble is to keep that chime up in the ready position. So the ready position for chime ringing is where you have the chime in your hand, they're ready to go, and they're just living kind of up on your shoulders. And that way, when you ring the chime, it's already in position. You don't have to bring it up and then ring it. Because one of the things that I noticed in some of the parts as we were going through is that the notes were just a little on the late side coming in, and part of that has to do with that preparation that I was talking about earlier on. And in this particular piece, Where Waters Flow, and this could be a good sneak peek into the other groups that are going to be looking at this as well, is that for each of these quarter note movements, you actually have to prepare to play the bell a full quarter note ahead of where you ring. So you start from the ready position, you bring it up, and then you have that flick of the wrist, up, flick of the wrist, up, flick of the wrist. So that whole movement to move the bell or the chime into position to play actually takes time in the piece. And so that becomes part of the music as well. And in fact, that's part of the elegance, I think, of the handbell, hand chime art form, is that it's a visual thing as well as a musical thing. And so finding that the preparation as part of the music, I think will really help you solidify some of those quarter movements in the piece, especially thinking about those bigger chimes at the bottom of the table. You actually have to prepare those a little bit sooner than that quarter note as well, because you have a lot more that you have to move. And just sort of lastly, in this particular group, just watch where you're holding the chime. I'm noticing a couple of different places where you're holding it. A couple of them were a little bit off kilter, which I think is contributing a little bit to maybe some of the instability that I'm hearing. And what you want to do is you have that sort of part where the clapper meets the chime, and you want to sort of put the crook of your thumb kind of right up against that. And you can do that with all of the chimes, even the lower ones. And I noticed the guys in the bottom of the table having to rest it on something, which is quite cute to see. You do need to have both of your hands for that, and that's totally fine. But make sure that you've got that in there, and that the chime is kind of square in the hand, not off to the side. Because if the chime is slightly off to the side when you go to ring it, it won't engage the clapper properly. So make sure that it is really close or square in the hand and in that position there, and then just bring them up. That's all. So don't leave them on the table. Bring them up to the shoulder, and then as you're working through it, start to work in that preparation into the music itself. And I think the comment that I made to the first group about counting, because it was really nice to hear your conductor counting with you through the piece. I'd like to start to see the students start to count with them, with the conductor, because I think, again, that helps the ensemble really settle into the beat itself, but also helps the students to internalize the beat. Because one of the things that I do say with my ringers is that they're responsible for that ultimately. It's not me. My job as the conductor is to create the shape of the music and to show you where I want the music to go. It's the ringer's job to have that beat internalized as you're going through. So starting to count and play at the same time, I think will go a long way to help with that. And I can tell you that as a young musician, many years ago, I struggled with that. And I totally get that it's hard to do. But I promise you that if you stick with it, it is an extraordinarily worthwhile exercise to learn, because even in any of the professional stuff that I do now, that counting is always going on in my mind. It doesn't matter how simple or how complicated the piece, I can always turn on that ticker tape of that count in my mind, and it helps line me up with the rest of the musicians that I'm playing with. So thank you so much for playing today. It was wonderful to see.
Thank you, Stuart. Let's turn things over to Marg to introduce our third group.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to introduce the next group, which is St. Bride's Anglican Church. Although this choir had a set of 3-octave handbells for many years, this choir is a relatively new group. In the year leading up to the pandemic, they lost most of their original ringers, either because they moved or, it's often the sad case, they go off to university. And the handbells had to be mothballed for a short period of time. Then, of course, the pandemic set in. As the lockdown was lifted, however, singing choirs, as we know, were not allowed to sing, and some of the members of that group wanted to learn how to ring. And they asked to learn how to do this, and it wasn't a fit for everybody who attempted to ring, but they ended up with a very dedicated group who wanted to continue even after all the other restrictions were removed. The group now consists of 2 members of that original handbell choir and 6 others who learned to ring during the pandemic. Recently, their curate, whose experience, interesting enough, is in change ringing, has joined them, and she is one of the ringers that is in their presentation today. Their musical skills vary from being unable to read music to being accomplished at several instruments. Please enjoy St. Bride's Handbell Choir as they play Let There Be Peace on Earth.
2, 3.
wonderful performance of this piece. I think this group, at least from the bio that was read, exemplifies how wonderfully accessible this art form can be. Having people involved who have a lot of musical experience versus mixed with those who have very little musical experience, and to put a performance like that together is quite wonderful. And also to do it without a sort of an externalized conductor, to be that uniformly together is quite something. So congratulations on that. That is very, very well done. And sort of, if we sort of remember the technique that I've been talking about, I'm seeing more of the technique that I would like to see from hand chimes in this video. So that sort of motion, very little movement in the arm, and it's all in the wrist. You can kind of see a lot of those players doing that. There's still some other players that are need to sort of work towards that. But this is sort of a group that I'm seeing that in a more uniform way. So well done with that. With this particular group, what I'd like to see a little bit more is the visual aspect. The musical aspect is really on a good footing, I think, in this one. So now I'd like to see a little bit more of the visual aspect of it. And what I'm seeing from some of the ringers in this group is the play and stay kind of way of playing, where you play ring, it stays, and you bring it back. There's this sort of really angular kind of motion. And especially when you have longer notes, and I unfortunately didn't have the score in front of me, but in my ear, there's some places where you have longer held notes, and just having a little bit more freedom and movement in the arm, I think will help give you that sort of more elegant way of playing. But also bringing that in allows you to not impale yourself when you're damping the chime. So if you play and stay, and then you've got to come back in, it creates kind of that sort of ba, it's like a percussive offset of the note, where in a lyrical piece, you want to have ba, and it almost like is like brush damp to stop, where it just kind of disappears into the rest that's there. And so that will, I think, moving the arm a little bit more in those circular motions will help with that. And the other thing with this particular group that I'd like to hear more of is kind of the difference between where the melody is and where the accompaniment is. And one of the challenges, at least from my ear, that I can hear is that often the melody sits in that middle part of the table. And one of the things that I find really challenging with both handbells and chimes is when the melody is singular in the middle part of the table, meaning it's not doubled in the octave above or below, but is on its own in the middle. When you have accompaniment passages on either side, I find it really, the melody in the middle really has a hard time speaking out against that. And so one of the things we have to be aware of now, because as I mentioned earlier, as an ensemble where we play one or two notes out of a group, we have to be mindful of when we are playing melody and when we're playing accompaniment. And so one of the things that this technique of movement will help is that when you're playing the accompaniment figures, and you know, like I'm hearing it quite a bit on the lower end of the table, you want to play a little bit closer to the body. That helps to make the dynamic just a little bit less and allow room for that melody to go. When you're playing the melody, that's where you can start to extend the arm a little bit. And that's why from a starting point, we want to get used to that wrist motion in activating the chime. But then when you start to add in the weight of the arm, then we can increase that dynamic level a little bit, which then will allow that middle part of the table to speak a little bit. Where it gets really tricky is at the top, because I find in the chimes and even in the bells, the top bells just kind of ring at their dynamic, and that's kind of where they go. But the same idea can apply to you there. Try to ring. I work with a colleague every summer down at the International Music Camp, and we talk about planes of playing, where we have the ringing here versus ringing out here. And typically when you're wanting to play softer, you would ring closer, and when you want to ring louder, you would play further away. So we now need to start to explore this range, because you've got a really good fundamental understanding of the music that you're playing and a fundamental cohesiveness as an ensemble. So for this group, one of the things that I'd like to see is now starting to explore also that the range of motion of that. And so when you're playing accompaniment passages or figures in the piece, rings a little closer to the body. When you're playing melody, don't be afraid to ring out just a little bit more. Then when you are in rehearsal, you can start to temper that a little bit. If this is too much, you can go here. And that's part of the balancing act we do in rehearsal when we're trying to put a piece together to put in front of an audience. But all in all, really, really well done. And the other thing, just as I'm reading my notes here, the last thing I'll say, and it goes on this sort of same line as what I was talking about between the accompaniment and the melody. One of the things that I heard in this piece is some really lovely conversations between the melody and some moving lines. So where the melody becomes static or doesn't move on a held note, then all of a sudden some other lines sort of come on and take over. And I call that sort of the tapestry of the music that we're playing. And it's really fun when you can start to explore colors in that tapestry. So when you have a moving line, when the melody is static, that's where you can ring out, because often those lines are moving us as a listener to either a cadence or to a shift in harmonic progression or to a different component of the piece itself. And so when you're playing the sort of quarter note patterns, you can be less, but when you're part of a moving accompaniment line, move that accompaniment line to where you're moving to. And I think those couple of little things that you can start to explore now will really elevate what it is you're already doing so well. So congratulations. Again, thank you very much for your performance.
That is great. Thank you so much for the comments. We are going on to our fourth and fifth groups, and these groups were going to be playing live. But for all of you, you probably know that we had a great big snowstorm that came through last night. And here in London, it dumped about a foot of snow, and in other places, I think it did even more. So our next group, I just want to check with Krista first if she is still playing live. She did send me a video just in case when we found out that the storm was coming. So Krista, which way are we doing this?
We're going to do live.
Excellent. That is glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that. So because it's a live performance, what I'd like you to do is, if you don't already have it set this way, in your Zoom call, you can set different views. Some of you might already be on speaker view, but those of you who are on gallery view, if you switch to speaker now, when Krista starts playing, then it will jump to her camera and you will be able to see. I should also mention one caveat, and that is Zoom is not the best for doing music. We are doing it this way so that we can all connect, but at the same time, Krista is also video recording her performance. So ultimately, we are going to have a very good recording of this piece from today's performance, even if over the Zoom call, it doesn't come through with the best quality. Okay, Royal Oak Community School is an independent school located in Niagara-on-the-Lake. The school follows a student-led inquiry approach and cares deeply about the following the interests and passions of the students. The Royal Oak Chime Choir consists of 15 grades 7 and 8 students. Although some were unable to be here to perform with us today, all 15 students have been working extremely hard since September to learn the chimes. Some of us had some musical background, while others have never read sheet music before this experience. So we thought it would be best to pick a song that was familiar to all of us. We are so grateful to have this opportunity and hope that you enjoy our take on Louis Armstrong's classic song, What a Wonderful World.
It's so great to see you, and it was really nice to hear you play live. And I just want to say congratulations. And I agree with your teacher. When you're first starting out with something, it's really great to do something that's familiar. And you brought me right back to when I was in high school, because that was one of the first pieces that I ever sang a solo on. So what a great way to start the morning. So thank you very much for that. It was really nice to hear you play. One of the things that I had said earlier is that I often approach handbell groups and handbell or chime choirs and whatnot as choirs. And so when I'm working with them, a lot of the things that I'm saying to them are similar things that I would say to a choir that I'm working with, because I think that there is a lot of similarities. I mean, obviously there's some instrumental stuff too. This is a percussion instrument, but one of the things that I would encourage you to do is maybe when you're doing this is isolate the melody by itself. So the players at the top of the table who have the melody, really work that by itself. To really find the overall connection, because one of the things that, as we've sort of discussed this morning, that is one of the challenges of this instrument is that the melody could be divided between 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 people, and those 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 people need to pretty much have one brain when you're working through all of the melody stuff. And so one of the ways we can start to do that is to really isolate that component of the piece and play through it as a single line. And what I would suggest those that are comfortable is to either sing or hum along while you're doing it, because when you do that, then you can start to hear the connection between the notes and not just your particular 1 or 2 notes that are part of that. The other thing, and I don't know this arrangement, and I didn't have the music in front of me, but one of the things that I sort of noticed in the lower end of the table was that ba, 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 and that's kind of what I was talking about in one of the previous pieces, where you have that sort of really percussive offset of the note. And I wonder in this particular piece if you might explore a slightly softer damp of the note rather than a hard on the shoulder stop. So when you ring the quarter note, when you bring it back, and this will take some practice because you don't want the note to extend too far into the rest, but I don't think you want it to sort of, you in handbells, we talk about thumb damps and marts and things on the table. We don't want to have a shoulder damp kind of note where you play and then you hear that bah, bah. And so I think perhaps maybe for the bottom end of the table, when you're ringing, try not to ring with that like really strong arm the whole time. Soften that just a little bit, keep the chime a little closer to the body, and then when you bring the chime to the shoulder, which you're already doing so well, and I'll tell you where you're placing the damp is perfect because you're placing it right on the next beat. It all works really well. It's just really harsh when you think about the overall context of the melody. And so I think if you can bring it back, but don't try to ram it into your shoulder to stop the note. See what would happen if you rang and just kind of left it there for a second. Because what I notice with chimes when I use them is that bells sometimes take a little bit more sort of compression to stop the sound. Certainly the bigger bells do. But with chimes, I notice that as soon as you kind of touch the tines a little bit, the sound goes away. So instead of bringing it right back to the shoulder, what would it be like if you experimented with bringing a little closer to the body and then just tapping or like placing it on the shoulder? Maybe that would soften that sound just a little bit. The added sort of bit to that, that once you start working on, like I mentioned in the last group, that plane of playing, whether you're ringing full arm, which I saw some of you doing, versus playing into the shoulder a little bit more, then what will start to happen is you'll start to build in a little bit more of that dynamic palette in the playing that you're doing. And I think for you guys, that's kind of where you're at. just sort of exploring the range of the instruments a little bit more, because generally speaking, I'm seeing relatively good technique across the table. I think you've got a really good sense of what you're doing. So congratulations for that. Now I'd like to see just sort of exploration of, what does it sound like when I play here versus out here? What does it sound like if I hard damp to my shoulder versus soft touch? What does it happen in the melody if we don't damp right away, but we allow for just a little bit of that legato playing to come in, where you cross over into the next note just ever so slightly? You know, I remember as a piano player playing and being told, you play a note, and if you want to play legato, you play and lift, right? Play and lift. So it's not here and then there, but play and lift. And so the same kind of idea with the chimes. That's part of the teamwork that we get into with hand chimes and handbell ringing, that is different than the teamwork needed to sing in a choir or play in an orchestra or other ensemble, instrumental ensemble. But really well done. And again, another really fantastic example of a group of people with varying experiences coming together in what is a really accessible art form. So thank you very much for playing, and congratulations to everything you did today. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for playing live. We have one more group to play for us today, and they are also live. And if I kind of move out of the way here, you can see them there. Yeah, they're all waving for you. So Maddie is going to introduce our group, and then I'm going to take a moment to switch over the Zoom calls, because in order to accommodate this, I actually have 3 Zoom calls going right here in the church. So I'm going to mute myself and let Maddie do her thing, and then we'll switch things around so that we can perform live as well.
Great. So Lester B. Pearson School for the Arts is a public elementary grades 4 to 8 school in London, Ontario, Canada, and is part of the Thames Valley District School Board. Pearson is one of only 2 schools for the arts at the elementary level in all of Canada. There are many high schools for the arts throughout the country, but only 2 at the lower grades. Students at Pearson study all of the regular curriculum, but in addition to those subjects, they have an extended day, which allows them to have specific courses in music, dance, drama, and visual art. Specifically in music, every student studies vocal music, piano, keyboard, and one of either winds or strings. Hand chimes is something quite new for the students. The group you will see today are all grade 8 students, and the piece is a handbell arrangement of Dona Nobis Pacem by Julio Caccini with piano accompaniment and featuring solo cello. We hope you enjoy the Pearson Chime Ensemble.
Okay, I'm just going to take a moment to switch things over and make sure we're right on the right Zoom call, and then we're going to perform for you. Kids are just going to gather around so they can listen to what you have to say.
All right.
Okay.
And did I hear right? Everybody here is in grade 8?
Yes.
Yeah.
Congratulations. For grade 8, I don't think I was as mature and poised as you all are as musicians and mature musicians. So wonderfully done. Well done. And I was very privileged to go to one of the arts high schools in Ontario, but I was not fortunate enough to find one of the 2 arts middle schools. So well done. Congratulations. I sort of was talking a little bit about just before you played it again, how wonderful it is to see the chimes interact with other instruments. I think it's really neat how they sort of play off each other. And one of the things that as I get older as a musician, that I'm really interested in is colors of instrumentation. What do the colors, how do they work together? That's that whole tapestry of sound. And I thought you did a remarkable job with this piece. It's such a beautiful lyrical piece of music. A couple of, I was going to say, the second thing that I was going to say was that your technique is really quite good. The sort of what I've been talking about all morning. I'm seeing the arms up at the shoulders, ready to go. I'm seeing a little bit of that preparation before the beat. And I'm seeing that wrist motion, which is fantastic to see. Again, at grade 8, congratulations. Now, one of the things that sort of occurred to me as I heard it this time is a phrase that sort of came to my mind, and that is, not all quarter notes are created equally. And what I mean by that is, in this particular piece, you play a chord, 2, and then you play the same chord, and then the chord changes in the next measure, and you're playing a whole bunch of quarter notes. And when I was watching, what I saw is that you approached every quarter note in the same fashion. So the same way, the ringing, the same technique. But in a piece like this, not all quarter notes are created equally. What that means is that perhaps, and in your exploration of this piece, you might ring a little fuller arm on the first one, and then on the circle back, then make the next couple a little bit smaller. What that does is it changes that dynamic movement. The other kind of really nuanced thing you could try is that quite often in a piece like this, where the harmony kind of changes 1 per bar, is move out and then come back and then move out to the next one. So your arm is always moving and you're not actually playing the bell or the chime, sorry, in that same space. It's actually being played along that plane of playing. And then what happens in that kind of way is you have a stronger downbeat and then a little less on beat 2, but then that chord is moving to the change in the next measure. So there's always musical momentum in what you're doing. And the other thing that I would just like to say is that once you start to do that and you're playing in that plane, really find that visual aspect. And I know there's some discussion as to whether it's important or not in terms of playing, and I get that. But one of the things that I would really like to see is just a little bit more elegance in the motion. So instead of playing quarter, 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 but quarter and having that sort of move, especially when you have longer notes, you can really enjoy that movement around. And the nice thing is that built into that movement when you're playing longer notes is the preparation. So you're not preparing off the shoulder to play, it's already built in to what you're doing. And I think those couple of little things will help take you to that sort of next level because you're already doing so many wonderful things right. So congratulations on a really great performance twice this morning.
Thank you.
That's great. If you guys can just have a seat, we're going to finish up. Thanks. Thank you so much for all of those comments for our students particularly. That was great. So, Stuart, do you have any final comments kind of about the day itself today? Like things generally for everybody.
Sure. I think for me, what a wonderful way to spend the morning. And I know it's closing in on lunchtime for you, but it's just closing out of breakfast for me because I'm an hour earlier than all of you. And I can't think of a better way to spend a morning than listening to some wonderful handbell music or hand chime music. And a couple of sort of consistent things that I really sort of saw amongst all of the groups is just really try to explore the technique a little bit more in terms of that the preparation of the pitches, in terms of that plane of playing, and really explore how that can have an impact on the music that you're doing. And then the other thing, sort of lastly, that I'd like to sort of really encourage you all to do, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, is really start working on that counting as you're playing, whether that's an external counting or whether that's an internal counting, but really starting to develop that internal metronome, because those things really, really help an ensemble where you only play 2 or 3 notes at a time really line up with one another. But just congratulations. It's so great to see the young people playing. It's so great to see new people engaging with the instrument. And it's so great to hear the wonderful things that are continuing to happen in Ontario. So once again, thank you very much for a great morning. And I'll just say one more time, thank you for inviting me to do this. I feel very privileged and honored to be able to be here this morning.
So at this point, Lisa, if I can turn it over to you to start our little list of thank yous.
Yeah, so as part of the program, each group was offered to have an expert, a clinician, come to their rehearsal space or meet with them on Zoom to help them with this process, whether it was getting started or understanding how to play hand chimes, or maybe for the more learned conductors already, figuring out the music and anything that the groups needed. Some groups weren't able to take us up on that offer, but I would like to thank Debbie McMackin, who did offer her services. And actually, you saw Debbie play in Krista McMackin's group, the group that played What a Wonderful World. She was down there on the end, playing with her daughter's ensemble. So that was lovely to see Debbie. We did have Barb Neal, who you'll see on our Zoom here, who was a clinician for several of the groups, including Krista's group. And we'd like to thank Barb for all her hard work. She went to all the two different groups and worked with them. And I'm certain that they benefited greatly from Barb's extensive knowledge. We thank Barb and we thank Debbie for their hard work and for their just enthusiasm and willingness to participate in this program. So thank you very much.
That is great. Thank you, Lisa. And Marg, if we can turn it over to you next.
Thanks, Rob. I'd first of all like to give a shout out to the committee from OGEHR for being involved with this Trillium project. And I think we have everybody on the screen, Rob, Lisa, Maddie, Mary, and Sona. So thanks. I feel an honor to be part of that committee. And this, for those of you behind that, we've worked, I think, since about 9 months working on making this possible today. And it's been a great team to be part of. But two people in particular, I think we need to give a special shout out to, and that is to Lisa, who is the initial contact with you, Stuart, with the clinicians and with the directors of each of the choirs. So Lisa, thank you for all of your pieces in the background. And then of course to our trusty leader, Rob, who we couldn't do this without you, Rob, because of your passion for handbells and your expertise and also your technological know-how that I'm in awe of. So thank you for putting all those pieces together and making today happen. I think today has been extremely exciting, and to be part of this project and see it. I know it's not finished yet, but to see it come to this part is wonderful. Then I also have the pleasure of, again, thanking Stuart for being part of this project and for joining us today. I love the positive, encouraging comments that you've been able to give to each of the groups. And I also love the very valuable next steps that you've given to each of the groups as well. And as a player, I think I speak for all of us that whether your comments, I think, resonated for all of us, whether we're a new ringer or an experienced ringer. I think all the feedback that you gave kind of made an impact on all of us. So we thank you for that. And we very much appreciate you having been part of this project. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you, Marg, and thank you to Stuart as well. I get some final thank yous also to wrap things up. Thank you to the development committee who came up with the idea originally of applying for this grant and put in all of the work to write the grant and send it into the Trillium Foundation. Of course, thank you to the Ontario Trillium Foundation for providing the money which allowed all of this to happen. Mark beat me to the punch. I was going to thank all the committee members as well. They have worked so hard to make all of this happen. And of course, I need to thank all of the groups who are participating in the project. It is so nice today to see all of the labors that have gone into producing these pieces. So a big thank you to them and to everybody who is on the Zoom call viewing things. So I think at this point, we can officially wrap up this recording session of the Zoom call. Maddie, if I could ask you to stop the recording part.
Yep.
And thank you to everybody here. And